Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I hope that you would like what you see and subscribe below for more. In today's video, we are going to be sewing. This is the second sew along in our dresses for B-Day series. Last week we made Simplicity 9644. So if you missed that sew along, you can click right here and go watch that. In this video, we're going to be sewing another Simplicity pattern. This one is actually a women's size pattern, so it's from 18W to 38W, and I'm really excited about this one. The pattern is Simplicity 9259, and I'm going to be sewing view B on this pattern. I know I mentioned this in our live on Sunday, but in case you missed it, again, I'm going to be sewing Simplicity 9259 view B, and I have some lightweight knit fabric. The fabric is a viscose spandex blend, so it's really nice. It's lightweight, and I think it's going to work really well for this pattern. It's actually purple, so I'm going to be twinning with the model. I looked on the back of the pattern. I came down to the finished garment measurements. If you do not know what size to cut when you're working with commercial patterns, I urge you to, number one, check out my Learn to Read and Understand pattern series here on YouTube, but also take a look at the finished garment measurements after you take your body measurements. Don't just cut based off your body measurements. Make sure that you cut based off of the finished garment measurements, because that includes all of the ease, the wear and ease, and the design ease of the garment. So make sure that you look at that before you just cut out your pattern based off of your body measurements. So for sizing that I'm going to be cutting, the bust measurement right now has me in between the size 20W and the 22W, as well as my waist is kind of in between those sizes, but my hips is actually a 24W. So I think I'm going to go with the 22W. This is knit fabric, although I don't want it to be too clingy on me. I'm not really into fitted garments right now. Although last week's dress was fitting. I was like, girl, wait, I didn't know you was gonna be fitting like this. So I don't want it to be too fitted. So yeah, based off of those measurements on the back of the pattern for the finished garment measurements, I think I'm gonna go with the 22W for this pattern. I will also say, if you are new to sewing, do not get caught up in the sizes between ready-to-wear garments, meaning garments that you buy at the store, Target, Zara. Do not get caught up in those sizing versus pattern size. This is all based off measurement. So you may be a size 10 or 12 in store. You may be a size 18, 20 in patterns. That's just how it goes. So yes, the 22W, I'm like, girl, what? But that's just what we're doing. This is what we got to do, okay? So yeah, I'm going to go with the 22W, and I may grade over to the 24 for the hips. We'll see. I may not have to, because again, this kind of just flows down. It's not really fitted. So I think I'll be good on the hips, and I'll just go with the 22W. So let's go ahead and get started sewing. Okay, to begin, we're going to start working on pattern piece number 1, which is the front overlay. The first thing that we need to do is reinforce right here at this front opening. If you have your pattern piece close by, it's not the opening down here, it's this opening here. We're going to be reinforcing between the small and large dot. So we're going to stitch here, pivot at the large one, and then come back to the small one. And again, we're just doing a reinforced stitch, so you just stitch right along your seam line. So again, let's go ahead and do that. Make sure that you have transferred your circles. I have mine transferred here. And again, we're just going to do a reinforced stitch. All right, once you've done your reinforced stitch, we can clip to the large circle. I don't know what happened on this side. I got a little cricket there, but all is well. Go ahead and do your reinforced stitch and then clip to your large circle. Do not clip through it. Now that we have the inner corner reinforced, now we can do a narrow hem along the front edge of our front overlay. So what you can do is go ahead and press under 5/8 of an inch. Once you have that pressed, you can open out the fold in the raw edge to the previous fold, and then fold it over again, creating a narrow hem. So go ahead and create your 5/8 of an inch narrow hem. Now I'm going to head to my pressing station and go ahead and press it in place. Okay, here's a look at my narrow hem that I just pressed into place. Again, you want to fold under 5/8 of an inch, give that a press, open it out, fold in the raw edge to that
previous press and then fold it over and give it a final press. So this is how mine looks here. I'm going to go ahead and stitch it in place. Depending on the type of knit that you're working with, you may need to grab some pins to hold it in place, but my press is holding the fabric really well, so I'm just going to head to the sewing machine and go ahead and stitch it now. I will be using a straight stitch, and I'll be stretching my fabric very slightly. I don't want to cause any ripples or pull. I still want it to have some give, so I'm going to be using a straight stitch for this stitch. I am stitching with the right side of my fabric facing up, so I'm going to be using my finger to kind of feel the fold here, so I make sure that I am not going over past it. Now, if you're not at this stage yet and you're not comfortable, you can flip and just stitch so that you can see your hem. Just know that your bobbin thread will be on the right side of your garment. All right, I have my narrow hem sewn on. This is what it looks on the inside. I have given it one final press. So you go ahead and do yours the same way. And now we're going to just do a narrow hem on the lower portion of the front overlay. So the same way that we did this narrow hem, we're going to do the exact same steps to do the lower edge. Go ahead and do yours now. All right, I have the lower edge of the front overlay narrow hem complete. So this is what it looks like here. The next thing for us to do, we're still working on the front overlay, is up here along the top edge, we are going to fold the slanted edge here to the inside along the fold line. We also have different fold lines that are labeled. I'm going to grab my pattern here. So your fold line 1, fold line 2, we also have a fold line number 3. So we are now working on fold line 1. We're going to be folding that into the inside. All right, so we can go ahead and fold this to the inside along the fold line. I actually placed some snips on both edges of my fold line just so I can fold it in and make sure it's nice and even. You may have just transferred your marking. Either way works fine, but just fold in along that fold line. Now, I see that they don't say to finish off this raw edge. When you're working with knits, most of them do not fray or unravel. So it's not necessary to finish off knit edges all the time. Sometimes it just comes down to personal preference. For me, I'm looking at this and I do think I want to just finish off this edge because it will be toward the inside of the garment. And just personal preference, I like all my edges seams to be finished. All right, friends, so I went ahead and serged off that edge and I went ahead and basted it along the top edges and the lower edge of that fold line that we folded in. So go ahead and again, fold yours in and go ahead and baste along the lower edges. Next, we can go ahead and put this to the side and grab our ties. Okay, for our ties, we are going, you should have cut out 2. We're going to open them out, fold them right sides facing like so. And we're going to stitch in a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, leaving the openings here where the dots are open. So you don't want to close this here. We're just going to be stitching 5/8 of an inch along the slanted edge, and be sure to again leave this open so we can flip it right side out. We're going to do that for both of our ties here. Let's go ahead and stitch them down now. Okay, I have both of my ties sewn. I am going to trim down my seam. Okay, once you have it trimmed, go ahead and turn your ties right side out. All right, now that we have our ties sewn, trimmed, flipped right side out, and pressed, you can baste the lower edge over here, the opening closed if you'd like. Once you have that done, we can move on to the next step. We're going to grab our front overlay again. I'm gonna slide these over. And I'm going to match up the small and large dots that are here on our tie ends. Mine are actually on the inside now, so I am gonna grab my pattern piece, but we're gonna match them up here with our large and small dot on this side that we reinforced, not over here on this one over here on this side. Okay, and so on the inside, we can flip it back. This is the large circle right here, and there's the small one. So just match up those markings and pin in place. Okay, I've gone ahead and matched up again the large circle here with the small circle that matches up here on the garment. Once you have it matched up, pin it in place, and we're going to baste it. Okay, once we have the tie-in basted in place, the next thing that we're going to do is take this folded slanted edge here. We're going to fold it onto the outside over the tie-in. So make sure that your tie-in is still there in between it when you fold it. So I just took it here and I brought it here. And then now we should be folding along the upper fold line. This is fold line number 2 now. This was fold line number 1. Now we're on fold line number 2, and it should be matched up like this along the raw edge. Now that we have it folded, we're going to baste this lower edge here. Go ahead and grab some pins and pin that in place. Okay, let's go to the sewing machine now, and we're going to baste it in place. I always like to baste my stitches, no matter what I'm sewing, a little bit shorter than the seam allowance. I just like to do that just in case the basting stitch is hard to remove for whatever reason. It's inside the seam allowance, not directly on it. So that's just something that I like to do. Let's go ahead and baste this now. All right, now that we have this top edge basted here, now we're going to bring this lower edge up and over in the same way that we brought the front slanted edge down, the folded slant. We're going to bring this side up. So right here on your lower edge, we're just going to fold along fold line number 3. This is fold line 3 here. We're going to fold that up like so. You also should be matching up a small dot here. I'm going to flip under. There's another small dot, so I want to make sure I match those up. And you should have transferred some notches. So go ahead and grab some pins. I'm going to pin at my notch. I'm going to pin at my small circle here. Make sure I'm going through. All right. And I'm just going to pin the remaining edges together. Okay, now that we have it pinned, we're just going to stitch in the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance this entire stitch. So I'm going to start stitching down here 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to pivot once I get to that small dot. And then I'm also going to come over here and make sure that I tack this down and secure it because I just basted this in place. I'm going to make sure that I stitch all along here as well. So again, we're going to be stitching right along here, along the edge. Make sure that you pivot when you get to your circles and just go ahead and do your 5/8 of an inch stitch now. All right, after you have it sewn, you can go ahead and trim. All right, let's go ahead and turn it out, see what it looks like here. Wait, what? Don't know how I feel about it right now. I'll wait till the dress is done to make sure, but I don't know. Okay, let's go to the next step. All right, we can go ahead and put our front overlay to the side for just a moment. And now you want to go ahead and grab your front pattern piece. So this is pattern piece number 3 here. This is our front. I'm going to grab my front overlay, and with right sides up, you want the right side of your front up and the right side of your overlay up. We're going to match up our dots that we transferred as well as our notches here at the top of the shoulder. So go ahead and match up your notches. You should have transferred a dot up here as well. Go ahead and match that up. Then we will pin in place. Okay, now that you have that pinned, we're also going to match up our armhole area here and pin that in place, as well as the side seam. So go ahead and match everything up, match up all your notches and pin. Okay, once you have it pinned up here along your shoulder, your armhole, and the side seam, we're going to do a basting stitch. So you just want to go ahead and baste this all in place. Make sure that you start your basting right here at your circles, and you can just pivot and continue your pivot all the way down your side seam. Once you have the front overlay basted in place, now we can grab our other remaining tie. Have mine right here, and we're going to baste it in place to this side of the dress here. So you should have transferred 2 markings on the other side of your dress. Go ahead and grab your tie. Make sure that you have your slant facing down like so, and you're just going to match up your tie between those circles that you transferred and pin it in place. All right, once you have it pinned, go ahead and baste the raw edges together. Okay. All right, now that we have the other tie basted on, I'm gonna go ahead and put this to the side and we can start to work on our back. Go ahead and grab your back pattern piece. This is mine here. I've also gone ahead and just serged down the center back seam edge. So what we're gonna do is just pin our center back together, match up your notches, and pin in place. All right, after you have it pinned, we can start down here at the bottom using the 5/8 of an inch stitch. Go ahead and stitch all the way up to the top. Let's do that now. All right, after you have your center back seam sewn, you want to go ahead and press your seam open flat like I've done here. And I also went ahead and just serged my shoulder seams. Totally optional, you don't have to do that, but I did go ahead and just serge my shoulder seams as well. Now that we have the center seam sewn, now we're gonna put our front and back together right sides facing. So here's my front. I also did those shoulder seams with the serger. And with right sides facing, we're going to pin at our shoulders. Now, before we pin them together, I am going to stabilize my shoulders. And I have this twill tape here. It's a 1/2 inch wide twill tape. I bought this a while ago. Again, it's just some twill tape. I'm going to use that to stabilize my shoulder. The reason why I'm doing that is because by this being a knit garment, it will tend to hang and pull and drape over time. And because we have this overlay, I feel like it's adding a little bit more weight to the front of it. So I just want to stabilize my shoulders so that the dress has a little bit more longevity. To do that, I'm just going to measure out a piece here. I'm gonna cut out 2. Again, I'm just using twill tape. If you have clear elastic on hand, you can use that. You can also use seam binding. This is optional, you don't have to do it. And so for me, I like to pin mine along the back seam allowance. So with right sides facing, this is the front facing up of my dress. This is the back here. I have it right sides facing like so. I'm gonna grab my twill tape here and just lay it right here at the top of my shoulder seam. When we stitch this on a 5/8 of an inch, we want our stitch to go right down the center of our twill tape. So make sure that you have this aligned so that when you stitch, it'll be going right down the center of your 5/8 of an inch seam. Go ahead and grab some pins and pin it in place. Okay, after you have your shoulder seams pinned, you can go ahead and pin your side seams in place. For me, I'm going to install my sleeves using the flat sleeve method. I like to do that method when I'm working with knit fabric. When I'm working with woven fabric, I will do a set-in sleeve. But I like to do the flat sleeve method when I'm working with knit fabric. However, if you want to do your set-in, you absolutely can. Go ahead and pin your shoulders and pin your side seams and sew those in place if you want to set your sleeve in. I'm going to go ahead and do my shoulder seams now and do my side seam after I install my sleeves. Okay, I have my shoulder seam sewn. I went ahead and pressed my seam open, so this is what the inside looks like here. I have my shoulder seam stabilized, and like I said, I like to put it on the back, so when I press my seam open, you can't see it, but the shoulder seam is nice and stabled. Now let's go ahead and start working on the neckband. All right, go ahead and grab your neckband, and we're going to fold it in half like so. And you want to go ahead and pin at your notch here along the back. Once you have it pinned, we're going to stitch in a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have the center seam of your neckband sewn, you want to go ahead and press that open flat. And now we're going to fold the neckband in half like so along the fold line. You want to make sure that you're folding it so the wrong sides are facing, so the right side should be out towards you. Go ahead and fold it in half and give it a press. Once you have your neckband pressed, you can pin it in place. I'm going to go ahead and grab my dress. I'm going to start pinning this on, matching up notches, matching up circles all the way around. After we have it sewn, we're going to go ahead and stitch in a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you want to do a double stitch. So after you have stitched in a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, then you're going to come over a 1/4 of an inch inside the seam allowance and do another stitch. For me, I just like to use my serger as that second stitch, but if you do not have a serger, just go ahead and stitch on your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then go ahead and stitch again a 1/4 of an inch away inside the seam allowance, not down here onto the garment. So let's go ahead and stitch it in place now. Okay, I have my neckband sewn on. I haven't trimmed or pressed anything yet. The instructions didn't say to stitch this on another seam allowance. That's why I just went with 5/8 of an inch. But I should have just known to do it on a 3/8 of an inch. That's typically what you sew neckbands on with. My neckband is pretty tiny here, as you all can see. I have a pretty tiny neckband. I mean, it's okay, but yeah, I wonder if it should have been a 3/8 of an inch because that's typically what neckbands are. But anyway, now I'm going to go ahead and trim this off. Again, you can do a double stitch right here, do a 1/4 of an inch away, and then trim close to the second stitching. Or if you have a serger, you can go ahead and finish off your raw edge with the serger now. Okay, y'all, I have my neckband sewn on. I finished off the raw edge and I gave it a press. I took a look at the model's dress here, and her neckband is definitely thicker. So I would recommend doing this on a 3/8 of an inch stitch, not a 5/8 of an inch stitch, so you have a little bit more here on your neckband. After you have it pressed, we can go ahead and stitch really close here along the outside. That is going to keep your neckband standing up, not flipping out. So go ahead and do a stitch right here along the edge of your neckband all the way around. All right, I've done the stitch really close to the neck seam here along my dress. Now we can go ahead and start working on the sleeves. Again, I mentioned that I'm going to do mine using the flat sleeve method. If you did not want to do that method, then you could have already set in your sleeve and stitched down your side seam. But now that I have my neckband on, I'm going to go ahead and install mine. Okay, so here are my sleeve pattern pieces here. I'm going to grab one and match it up to see if it matches to the notches, and this one does not, so this goes to that sleeve there. So this one with right sides facing, I have my single notch matching to my single notch and my double notch matching to my double notch. There is a circle you should have transferred at the top of the sleeve cap. It matches up to your shoulder seam. I transferred a notch, so I'm just going to match that up with my shoulder seam and start to pin my sleeve in place, matching up the notches as well as the circles that we transferred. All right, once you have your sleeve pinned in place, You want to pin the other one the same exact way, and now we're going to stitch at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have it stitched, you can go ahead and finish off your seam with your serger. All right, once you have your sleeves sewn in place, make sure you do a double check. It shouldn't be any folds or anything along your sleeve. Everything should be nice and clean. After you have it sewn, you can go ahead and finish off your stitch with your serger if you have one. The next thing that you want to do is go ahead and pin your side seam and your sleeve seam together. So with right sides facing, I'm just going to pin my underarm seam here together, making sure that's matching up. And I'm just going to pin my sleeve and the side seam. After you have it pinned, we can start stitching from the bottom up to the top, all the way to the end of the sleeve and a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now that we have our side seam and underarm sleeve sewn, just go ahead and take a look at your seam. Make sure everything is matching, everything looks nice and clean. Flip everything right side out. After we have this done, the last thing for us to do is our hems. Okay, our hem allowance is 1 1/4 inch, so you're going to press up 1 1/4 inch. Give that a nice press. You can put pins in it to hold it in place, or you can use a basting stitch to baste your 1 1/4 inch in place. After you have it basted, then you can flip it onto the right side and just do a top stitch following along with your basting stitch. You're going to do that all the way around the lower edge of your hem, as well as for your sleeve. The hem allowance for your sleeve is also 1 1/4 inch, so you would press that up, baste it along the edge, and then follow along with your basting stitch with the top stitch on the right side of your fabric. Okay, I have my hem all pressed in place. When you're sewing right here, you want to come to your seam and stop, and then lift up your overlay, start back stitching here, and continue with your hem. You don't want to just stitch all the way across, catching in your overlay. Make sure that you keep the overlay free. So when you're doing your top stitch, sew it here, stop at the seam, back stitch, and then move the overlay over, start back stitching here, and continue. Once you have your hems sewn, you are all done with your dress, Simplicity 9259.
Well, that is all for the video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed it. I can't thank you all enough for tuning in and watching the sew-alongs. It really does mean a lot. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications so you do not miss when I go live on Sunday. I go live on Sundays at 5 p.m. For 30 minutes. I answer some sewing questions and I talk about whatever sew-along that we do that week. So it's a quick little chit chat, hanging out with you all, answering questions, and I love it because you all input as well. So if someone has a question, then you can answer too. It's just a really nice sewing talk time, and I love that. So again, if you want to tune in live, I'll be live right here on YouTube on Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have a sewing question that you would like me to answer, I do have a Google form below. You can click that form and just type your sewing question there, which I do recommend because that gives me time to kind of research the question. Last week we had a question about wool, and while I was going to answer it one way, I was able to also look up and give a deeper answer. So I want to make sure that I'm giving you all value when you are tuning in on Sunday. So definitely fill out that Google form if you have a sewing question. I think that's all, y'all. Thank y'all again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Blessings, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to check out these 2 playlists here if you are interested in more sewing content. Check my blog out at brittanyjjones.com and make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video goes live. Until next time, blessings. Bye.